So I'm gonna video it on our cloud. Right. We are live on YouTube and we're just gonna record on the cloud. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Poetry and Prose. Thank you so much for joining us for our very first meeting of the year. It is the 26th of January, 2025. And our lovely, beautiful host for this afternoon will be Heather Latu Ferguson. Heather, thank you so much for hosting. It's always wonderful to have you, Chair.
Thank you, Gersha Gill. You're embarrassing me, man. Anyway, welcome to one and all for our first meeting of, we're entering our 11th year already. And when I look back at my own time here, I've already been here 5 years. So, when you're having a good time, what it's like. So, welcome one and all. And we're looking forward to this year and all the new um, authors of the month that we're going to have and all the new opportunities to share our work with each other and to get critiques, etc. Now we have a reading list to go by, and I see, Gersha, you put me first, so I guess I'm going to start, and then Cynthia's next. I'm not sure what will happen there, but we'll keep going. So my piece appeared in the My Trinidad magazine for January, and it's called A New Year's Celebration. The small enclave of city streets in Woodbrook, Port of Spain in the 1960s was a wonderful place in which to grow up. Childhood borders framed our world, the corner of Gaston Johnson Street, where it meets Panka Street, which turned into Lucknow Street with the Canadian Mission Presbyterian Church tucked into the curve of the road, that in turn went east onto Western Main Road on one hand, and Gaston Johnson Street going west past Fatima College across Mucurapo Road on the other. Beyond this thoroughfare, the land was flat and vacant, only coming into use for visiting circuses and trade shows. Running parallel to Panka Street was Hyderabad, and parallel to Gaston Johnson was Henry Pier. We often ventured to Woodbrook Cemetery, but not beyond. A tight-knit neighborhood. There were the Syrian Habibs next door. They were an uncle and grown nephew who had a clothing business on Charlotte Street. Mrs. Meng lived across the street. She was a beautician who serviced the Governor General's wife and occasionally Princess Margaret when she visited Trinidad. Her young son was never allowed to play with us. The Agostini family, consisting of father Neville, Chinese wife Marian, and children Ming, Candy, and Roxanne, lived across Panka Street to the side of our house. Together we raced jockeys and pitched marbles. And the D'Souza's, who lived next to them, had the only television on the street. We were often invited to watch it with them, leaving with squares of cheese left over from airplane meals, as Mrs. D'Souza was a flight attendant. These few people were the characters who peopled our world. While we lived in close proximity to each other and gleaned secrets as to their various lifestyles by observation, we usually kept to ourselves, except for the one memorable New Year's impromptu celebration that still lives in our collective memory. The Presbyterian Church had put on a play from which we children were walking home at around 10 in the evening. The usually reticent Mrs. Meng met us on the sidewalk with delicious bao buns still warm. Then Mummy brought over a box of chocolates to share around. Neville Agostini came running over with hard drinks for the adults and cokes for us children. And the D'Souza's brought French cheese. We all felt warm and friendly, the children playing a stupid game of jumping over cracks in the sidewalk, as the grown-ups laughed at the latest gossip in the neighborhood. Our little get-together attracted a local Indian couple who had a dilapidated house across from the side of Mrs. Meng's house, and whose name we never knew. They kept cows on their grassy backyard, and they seemed poor. Nevertheless, the Indian lady brought over some fresh pulaury with tamarind sauce. It was delicious. She and Mummy got into talking about recipes, and everyone relaxed, the warm drinks washing away all concerns of daily life. The highlight of the evening was the display of fireworks in the empty field across Mucarapo Road at midnight. That night was the latest we children had ever been allowed to stay up. What magical, glorious revelry. Life moved on at its own pace. Sometimes time seemed to stand still, and at other times it flew by. 11 plus exams reared its ugly head, and the time of racing popsicle sticks as jockeys in the drains that lined the streets after a rainstorm passed. Big events came too. Trinidad became independent, cutting ties with Britain, its colonial master. Time moved on, imperceptible yet unrelenting. It would only be in retrospect, some 60 years on, that we would see, without realizing it at the time, how we were surrounded by history. As children, little did we know that the name from Ucarapo Road was Amerindian in origin, or that Woodbrook was built on the former Woodbrook sugar plantation, or that the early streets were named after places in India from whence the indentured workers on the plantation hailed. Hanka, Lucknow, Hyderabad were all from the motherland across the Kalapani. Also in Woodbrook Cemetery was the tomb of Mickey Cipriani, who had died when his plane crashed in 1934 in the Northern Range. His mangled plane props adorned his resting place. The more recent streets were named for men who had been mayors of Port Spain. Sir Gaston Johnson, KC, 1922 to 1924, and the Honorable Henry Pear, 1924 to 1925. These were the then modern breed of movers and shakers in Trinidadian society at that time in its history. Fatima College harkened back to the presence of the Catholic Church in Trinidad, its founding fathers hailing from France during a time when Spain opened up the island to the rest of Europe. The Canadian Presbyterian Church came later with the Canadian Mission in 1868, bringing Christianity and education to Indians in Trinidad. Even our neighbors reflected our history. The Mengs and Marian Agostini, representing the coming of the Chinese in 1849 as entrepreneurs. Mickey Cipriani and Neville Agostini, representing Corsican immigrants who came on land grants to develop plantations. The Habibs as Syrian merchants, and the D'Souza's with a Portuguese presence dating from 1834. All of these elements came together like pieces in a mosaic to give us a microcosm of our nation's journey through time. We all left the neighborhood eventually, our family first, moving to Canada. Years later, my cousin Simon Lautu met Mrs. Meng's son, now living in Winnipeg, Manitoba. He had remembered us. Candy Agostini married a marine biologist, also from Canada. She found us by chance in Shelburne, Nova Scotia, and made contact after a space of 30 years. Like us, she had lost touch with the D'Souzas. Yet echoes of our old life had found us in another world. As we sat in the fading light of a Canadian summer's evening, we reminisced about the street we had all come of age upon, marveling at the memories which remained fresh and sealed off like a model ship in a bottle. Thank you. Well, we'll go on to comments, I guess.
Thank you, Heather.
It's quite a nostalgic piece. I think
Yes,
I can identify with that.
Yeah, I think most of us who have left Trinidad, part of us always remains there, and then our memories remain fresh and isolated. They haven't been sullied by the distance of time. And that's why we become writers.
Maybe if you didn't leave for Canada and remain in Woodbrook, I would be calling you part of the 1% today.
I have some comments, not comments, but things to add.
Yeah.
I went to Fatima College, so it was very nice to see that that interesting history you put to that area. that
Yes,
enclave,
yes.
as you say, yeah, as you said,
Yeah.
like the D'Souza.
Mhm.
There was a student with me named D'Souza, and he said to me, his father was the first actuarial scientist, I think, if not in the country, in the Caribbean, that D'Souza person. You talked about racing jockeys
Yeah.
and you mentioned popsicle sticks. Well,
Yeah.
we race jockeys, of course, but we used to make our jockeys nice, man, and diamond shape and thing, and race it in Bella Road, the river in Bella Road. And one time, Papa, we racing jockeys, rain falling up the road, but we continue racing jockeys. And then suddenly the river came down on us, man. We had to scamper up the walls. Otherwise, some of you might have got washed down, eh, boy? So the racing jockeys, the TV only. When I was in Sandy Grande, yeah, there was this person fronting the main road, Eastern Main Road, and they had a TV. And that was the only TV in the area. And we used to go and watch. Of course, we are in the gallery. You're watching from the gallery. Things like, let me see if I can remember, boy. Not Batman. There was another show. Green Hornet, not Green Hornet either. I can't remember. But black and white, of course, black and white thing. So that idea of with one person having the only TV in the area now, you had to share. And well, tamarind sauce, yes. I like tamarind sauce, peppery tamarind sauce. And the name, Mukurapo, I don't know, this can be double checked if it's Kumukurapo, right? Because I use that name in the book I wrote, my first work based on my experiences in sixth form in Fatima. I changed up some of the names, I think, but I think I used Kumukurapo as the place where the college is, and I didn't call it Fatima College. I called it All Saints College. So it was nice. Heather, I read your piece, a lovely piece.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, Cynthia is next, but
I think
she
Vishnu
was.
wants to say, Vishnu
I see
wants to say,
Vishnu, but he has to unmute.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
he has to unmute. He hasn't muted yet.
Who is the host? Could you host?
Yeah, Vishnu,
get
you have to
Yeah, I'm
unmute.
trying to ask him to unmute, but
Yeah.
he hasn't unmuted as yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vishnu, if you can hear us, we have to unmute your thing.
The microphone.
Yeah.
He gave one long speech there. I hope he could remember it.
I know. Vishnu, can you unmute? No, he ain't taking us on at all.
I think he's trying.
Oh, sorry.
Gush, see if you could help him now.
I'm asking him to unmute, so it should be popping up on his screen.
Vishnu, can you unmute? Yeah, he's just not hearing us.
Vishnu, try clicking on your audio on and off.
So he might be able to hear us, but we can't hear him.
Okay,
Yeah.
Vishnu, if there's a little upside down triangle on your next to the audio, next to the little microphone. Click on that and ensure that your audio is on correctly. Nothing. Is something coming up saying us when I ask you to unmute? No, we're still not hearing you. Let me know if you want to go out and then come back in. Okay.
Well, even though Cynthia's next, can we go on to Frank perhaps? Frank is, we can listen to Frank and then we'll move on from there.
Cynthia also sent her work, so if anyone wants to read it,
Okay.
just let me know and I can email it to you.
Okay, so we'll proceed with Frank.
Okay, so this is an excerpt from one of my short stories called Bonobo the Beater, and it's basically about corporal punishment as I remember it. Although it's fictional, there are some true elements to it. And the reason I chose the name Bonobo for the teacher, when you study human behavior in biology and so on, evolutionary speaking, mounting behavior, like you see in a type of ape in Africa related to the chimpanzees, they call the bonobos, and they use mounting behavior to mount one another to indicate superiority. So, for example, any warmongering person today, some prime minister who wants to invade another country, it's mounting behavior, or anybody who bullying you, they're exhibiting pretty well mounting behavior, referring to humans as primates as well. So I call him Bonobo for that reason. Okay, so here we go. Bat and Rajpal, you think this geometry class is funny? You're both 14. You should be acting more maturely as grade 9 students. Sorry, sir, Godi said. We're just discussing the problem. Mr. Ramphal fired back. What's so funny about quadratic equations? Look, both of you, get up on the bench. Although Godi and I had separate desks, we sat on a common bench wide enough to accommodate the two of us. Having a student stand on his seat, towering above the rest of the class, was a form of humiliation that was as effective a punishment as any alternative, barring a physical flogging. The tropical heat dictated an open classroom, the windows and doors always open to capture a cooling cross breeze. Just as we got up on the bench, Mr. Bonobo happened by on the outside corridor and spotted us through the open door. He was the dean of discipline. Why are these boys on the seats? He said. Mr. Ramphal, who seemed reluctant to have the punishment progress beyond what he had already inflicted, tried to minimize the infractions. They were just talking in class, nothing beyond that. Mr. Ramphal knew what depravity would take place if he relinquished control of our penance to Mr. Bonobo. They're good so, man. They learned their lesson already. They had enough shame for today, man. Bonobo, who wasn't impressed, replied in a slow guttural drawl, these boys old enough to know better, man. Only a good set of lash could do the trick. Send them up to my office. Godi and I slowly got off the bench and proceeded upstairs to Mr. Bonobo's office. This was not a comedic interlude. The mood was gloomy and somber. Our fellow students' faces were contorted in empathy. The teacher's face both in empathy and guilt. Mr. Ramphal felt guilty because he assumed responsibility for Godi and me being caught on the bench by Mr. Bonobo. I was sure Mr. Ramphal had not meant for his punishment to evolve into what might turn out based on Bonobo's reputation a flogging so ferocious and depraved, it would be analogous to bestiality. We entered the room and sat down. Mr. Bonobo came in without acknowledging our presence, headed over to the open window in the back wall of the room to take a look at nothing in particular. Perhaps it was a delaying tactic designed to intimidate the condemned. Then he went to his top drawer and produced a freshly harvested hibiscus rod, green, limber, 3/4 of an inch thick, and 3 feet long, with the bark still covering the entire length, like the scaly tail of a reptile. There was no eye contact between Godi and me, or between us and Mr. Bonobo, who slowly caressed the whip with a lascivious half grin that wasn't a genuine grin, but more like Mona Lisa's smile. His grin belonged to that of an obdurate ogre. Bonobo demanded no defense. He requested no explanation of how we came to be standing on the bench. It was then that he lined the length of the rod with a thick layer of white chalk. He rubbed the chalk back and forth rhythmically, as if masturbating, slow at first and then climaxing with a rapid push-pull application of the white coating. The chalk caked in layers on the whip like Onan's seed. He appeared to be pleased with the end result. A satisfied smile ripened on his face, a grin that used up the muscles on the left side of his mouth. It was as though he was undergoing the private pleasure of releasing pent-up flatus. I was mesmerized by this simidimi as I watched him ritualize the process. I forgot for the moment the reason we were there. It was meant to intimidate, and tears began to well up in my eyes as anxiety took hold of my autonomic nervous system. Intestinal movement was aggravated, and loud gurgling noises from my abdomen temporarily diverted my attention. Bonobo looked at me for the first time since he entered the room. His gaze was cold, and it pierced my body through and through like a rapier. He motioned to me with his right index finger of the same hand that held the rod. That finger was temporarily freed while he held the rod upright. The other fingers curled tightly around the shaft. I was automatically drawn and focused on that finger, which wiggled back and forth, demanding of me to get up and advance towards its owner. The finger dictated to me while I languished in a state of fugue. When the finger pointed up, I looked up. When the finger pointed down, my gaze shifted downwards. It seemed at that moment the finger's movement had hypnotized me. The finger was the master and Bonobo merely its henchman. The finger appeared to be a separate entity from the body to which it was attached, and it seemed more powerful than Bonobo himself. The direction of the wiggling finger then changed. It pointed to where I was to stand, and it continued to wiggle like the tail of a murderous rattlesnake. I immediately felt a cold flush from head to toe that was out of place in this hot tropical room. I was now sweating more than Bonobo. Mr. Bonobo drew closer, and with each step, my sense of terror escalated. My skin morphed into goosebumps. Medically speaking, goosebumps are referred to as piloerection. My skin morphed into goosebumps. Anxiety begat floods of adrenaline that coursed through my arteries, leading to a cold sweat. And out of the blue, and incongruously so, in the throes of anxiety, it occurred to me that piloerection was better than no erection. As suddenly as a strike of a cobra, Bonobo grabbed hold of my pants on one side. To secure a firm grip, he slipped his fingers into my pocket and he stretched the khaki over the skin of my backside so tautly that my skin and the fabric almost became one. A skillful surgeon's dissection with scissors and forceps might not have so successfully separated the fabric from my skin. My hand reflexively careened to the rescue of my backside as if my outward-facing palm was invincible armor. Bonobo broke the silence. Move your hand. I complied momentarily, but in a flash, my hand found its way back when Bonobo raised the rod for the first strike. I say, move your hand. And then much louder, move your hand. The Dean of Discipline, the doyen of the furrows of corporal punishment, was on his tiptoes, hand raised, his rod flexed back over his head. He was ready for the downswing in a plane that would maximize the speed of the rod at its nadir at my backside. He clearly intended to inflict maximum pain and suffering. He was ready to administer 3 strokes on my bottom. Reflexively, my hand gravitated over my buttocks for protection, an instinctive reaction of self-preservation. My gluteal skin was tingling from anticipatory anxiety. I say, move your hand, we. His threatening manner, and especially the we, implied dire consequences. Mr. Bonobo had started his attack by raising his arm vertically. He enhanced the height of his arm, ending his backswing above his head by elevating his body on his tiptoes. He gnashed his teeth and squinted. He transferred his weight to his leading foot and flexed his wrist to increase the speed of the end of the rod. All the while, he maintained his focus on the exact spot he aimed for on my backside. He held his breath and delivered the first stroke. It cascaded from its zenith like the blade of a guillotine. The first blow landed with such powerful force, it caused an explosion of burning, tingling, and pain, with accompanying numbness. The sensation was beyond belief, akin to fireworks. My body jerked with the shock of the impact. A bead of sweat began to form on my temples. The bead snaked down to my jaw, flowing irregularly as more sweat came from above and pushed on the trailing edge of the bead ahead. Tingling radiated from the point of impact in waves to the rest of my body like rapid ripples on a pond. I immediately felt limp, but Bonobo held me up with the firm grip he had secured through his hand in my pocket. The sound of the impact was crisp. I was unable to swallow. There was nothing to swallow, as adrenaline made my mouth dry. Neither fight nor flight was possible. Up until then, I had never experienced an assault of such brutality. I was convinced that Bonobo was Lucifer and that this was hell. The strike left a distinct tattoo of chalk 8 inches long on the taut fabric of my pants. Sympathetic shouts of, oh God, emanated from the girls' classroom next door. Even in my confused, disturbed mind, I realized the reason he had chalked the whip. He intended to aim for the same chalk mark, the same spot, for subsequent strokes. By administering 3 strokes on the same spot, Bonobo intended to break and macerate the skin, not just to cause pain. He engineered the triple impact to prolong pain long after his victims left the office. At this point in the assault, I was oblivious to the outside world, possibly catatonic. My affect was blunted and my body was deadened to pain. However, I could still recall the strokes as separate events because no state of catatonia or numbness could mask such wretchedness. Bonobo's skill, honed from years of practice, left a single thick chalk mark 8 inches long, each of the 3 layers of chalk was caked onto my pants like successive layers in shale. At the end of it, Mr. Bonobo had to help me back to my chair as I was limp as the clock in Salvador Dali's painting, The Persistence of Memory. When he was finished, Bonobo gave us permission to leave. He had a look of complete satisfaction, almost orgasmic, as he recovered his bearing and presence of mind. We left the office while Bonobo unrolled his sleeves, buttoning his cuffs and rearranging his shirt tail neatly into his pants. Godi shed tears like me, both before and after the punishment. And when I described the impact that Bonobo's whipping had on me, Godi pretended to be a toughie and admonished me with machismo. He said, "Boy, is them small lash you crying about?" And that was the encounter with Mr. Bonobo.
Very, very entertaining, Frank. You know, but a shame, you know, boy, to admit my father was a bonobo, you know, he look, it's 50 years since some of those boys were in QRC. They still remember getting cane from him. And I taking the brunt of the blame now.
Well, one of his students, Dr. Rajkumar, he's a lung specialist here. He was on here as a guest of mine one time.
Yeah.
He was an island scholar too from QRC. And I think he was at the end of your dad's whip as well.
Yeah. He liked the cane. He used to get off on it, I'm sure, just like Bonobo. You know, it's a power thing, eh? You know, when you're a small man,
Yeah.
you know.
But Frank,
Very
I find the
entertaining.
words you used were interesting because at one point you used the word assault. And I know this is old time culture, but I just wonder how it's almost borderline like abuse to kids to hit them like that.
It is child abuse. It
Well,
absolutely
it is
is.
abuse. It
Yeah.
is because you know, traditionally we went after the biblical term spare the rod and spoil a child, and many educational systems use that in Europe but all over the world: pinching, pushing, slapping, flogging, and what have you. But you know, there's an example. There was a teacher in Trinidad who was particularly adept at producing good results for the exhibition class. In those days, you had to have a pass the exhibition to get to high school. And so it was a competitive exam. And he produced really good results, but he was a really severe beater. Now that guy left Trinidad and came to Canada, where he continued teaching. But in Canada, for legal reasons, you can't touch a child even with the tip of your finger. And interestingly, he garnered better results. He garnered good results in Trinidad, but this was even better results in Canada. Which brings the question: really, was the beating and the flogging necessary for good results?
Well, that question comes back quite often because of all the crime that we deal with now. A lot of people question if they need to go back to those days where, you know, discipline was more strict, as opposed to now where kids are a bit more loose. So it's still a question that's being asked, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think there's a thin line, though, between disciplining a child with corporal punishment and what you described.
Yeah.
Just that was kind of psychopathic to put the chalk, to put it in one place, to like, that's way too much thought.
You know, Gershia, what my dad used to do was turn on the PA system so the whole school heard. So that was a further humiliation for the person who was getting caned.
Yeah.
That's equivalent to chalking the whip.
Yeah. It's just, plain wickedness.
Well, I don't know. I think back in the day they thought that if they just need to hit you once, you know, and everybody else would fall in line. But there were certainly some teachers that delighted in it. And I don't know. That's
Motilal, you ever get caned?
No, I never get caned, but we used to get whipped in primary school. We had a common entrance teacher named Maniram. And there was this guy named Ganbir who was a whip cutter. You come to the school and you cross the train line and you're in the guava patch. And I will tell Frank that guava much more harder than hibiscus or whatever it is. So that is what happened there. But in high school, I never had any thing there. Well, we have some teachers here, you know. We have well, Frank. I wanted to ask Frank is during his stint as a teacher if he ever caned anybody, but he answered the question. He said in Canada you can't do that.
Well,
Yeah.
what about Krishna? Did you
But I
ever
wonder if
cane
Vishnu and
someone?
Krish. I wonder if Vishnu and Krish ever cane anybody. Just asking. Yeah, Vish, go ahead.
No, one, you were not allowed a cane. Two, I had means. You use means of maintaining discipline. I use my eyes. My eyes, I would watch you sternly, right? Or I would use my little finger. I say, just my finger. I wouldn't no voice. I mustn't use voice. I would do so. And point to the entrance of the door, meaning, come, you wait there, right? You wait, stay right there. When I'm ready, you will see the finger calling you back. So
Well,
Well,
they use that.
But
So you
Krishna,
had to,
do you think
to
the
find means. Huh?
do you think the
No, I am not for corporal punishment at all.
do you think it would help the
Absolutely not.
crime that we have
Absolutely
today?
not. No, not for corporal punishment. I got licks once in common entrance class. That's really ruler, na. The ruler hit him.
yeah, but
Simple thing, madam.
yeah, but when you
We were flogged once, yes, for breaking beach. A whole set of us break beach, and they found us. We reached the school late, stupidly
That's
got to
cutting
school late.
class.
Stupidly gone to school in the afternoon. So the principal called about 10 of us, and we went picking mango and all kind of thing. In the quarry, that is in Gonzales side. We attended Escalier EC School in Gonzales. And he called all of us and he flogged us. Well, not the kind of delight Frank Bonobo had. Just a few lash and thing. Yeah.
I don't.
But totally against, no. Totally against the body, beating the body for the mind. I don't like that.
I agree.
Mind does things. It said don't interfere with the body. Don't ill-treat the body because of what the mind did. Deal with the mind. That's my position on corporal punishment. I hate it.
And that's a good segue to go into the thing about violence in society and so on. I think it's a knee-jerk reaction to assume that beating, say, some thieves would bring them back in line. I think the problem is more complex than that. I know in Singapore is a very lawless society, maybe like Jamaica and Trinidad. And then what they call a benevolent dictator came in. And he actually used corporal punishment to whip the country into, just for spitting chewing gum on the road, you got flogged. And today, Singapore is called the New York of the East. I don't know what that means, but I agree with Krishna. You can't get through to the mind by beating up the body.
Well, Motilal is next up for sharing
So-
his work. Yeah,
I don't know if Vishnu was typing something into the chat, Heather.
is he? Okay.
Okay.
I don't-
No,
yeah.
he's not.
Okay.
All righty.
So we'll move along to Vishnu and his
Well,
voicey cat.
Vishnu, I don't know if we can hear him. Vishnu, do you want to
Oh,
try
no,
your
sorry, not Vishnu, Motilal. Motilal is next on my list. Bear
Still
with
try
me.
it, Vishnu.
Okay, well, I
Mm-mm.
chose one of my earlier stories. This one is called Boise Khaki. In the 1960s, when you wanted something done in the village, you had to go to the headman Berridge. But to get to Berridge, you first had to pass through his wife, Boise Khaki. Berridge never answered the door himself. He would be greeted by Boise Khaki, who would inquire about the purpose of your visit before allowing access to the big man. Whether you wanted a job in the rice fields, a lot of land to rent, or a bigger part in the Ramlila. While Berridge would give the okay, it was only possible with the approval of Boise Khaki. She was tall, dark, and stout, but because of her height, she did not look fat. She looked the part of gatekeeper, and indeed it was difficult to get past her. When greeted with, "I want to see Ustad," as Berridge was affectionately called, Boise Khaki asked, "For what?" Listened, evaluated before granting entry. As the couple had no children of their own, they had adopted Berridge's brother's son, Boise. Hence, her designation, Boise Khaki, she being Boise's aunt. No one knew her real name, for that was long forgotten, as she had been married in our village for many, many years. And besides, no one would have dared to call her by her first name. Everyone, young and old, including her husband, called her Boise Khaki. Boise Khaki came from the neighboring village of San Francisco and was a daughter of a rich landowner. She attended primary school, passed the school leaving exams, but was not sent to high school as her brothers were. Instead, as was the custom for the girls, she learned housework and sewing at Miss Raju, the village seamstress. At 16, her marriage was arranged with with Berridge from Gopi Trace, who had a similar background and was of the same caste. Her dowry consisted of several acres of land and a few cows, which, when combined with Berridge's inheritance, positioned them as the most important couple in the village, which comprised mostly of rustic farmers, laborers, and farm hands. She always wore a set of thick bearers on either hand. That's her home jewelry. Their weight probably contributed to the strength of her arms as she dealt with the errant schoolboys who dared to steal her plums or her mangoes. She also had a tattoo on her right forearm, Ram Ram, written in Hindi, which was traditionally done when a woman becomes married. However, when she was a new bride, she wore glass bangles at her wedding, as was conventional then. It is said that when the last bangle breaks, it is a sign that the honeymoon is over. Boise Khaki still sported several glass bangles. However, her array of gold jewelry came out whenever there was a wedding in the village. Then we would see the nakuls, beras, churias, bindis, and mangal sutras as Boise Khaki would don her finest for these occasions. She ran the only rice mill in the village. In those days, the village grew all the rice that was needed and had quite a bit left for sale. Every house had what used to be called a rice box, in which paddy would be stored until needed and then would be dried and taken to the mill. Most villagers made their living through rice farming and planting and selling vegetables and watermelons. She also had a small parlor that carried basic foodstuff like flour, dal, salt, potatoes, sugar, etc. No alcohol was sold, and she didn't mind giving trust until the produce of the gardeners was sold. She organized a village susu where the ladies were encouraged to contribute $1 or $2 a week and would collect their hands when their turn came, thus saving or being able to buy jewelry or saris for themselves. As a natural leader of the women in the village, Boise Kaki would lead the singing at the Matikor and Barahi celebrations. Long before cupping, as was learned during the recent Olympics, was used to stimulate energy and circulation, Boise Kaki was a practitioner. She was curing Nara and Butchet using a glass and a lighted wick soaked in ghee with a thicker base of folded cloth. Belly pains, sprains, strains, and other elements were treated successfully by Boise Kaki. And some even swore that if you got pregnant by mistake, then you should visit her. She could accurately predict the weather because of her rheumatism and could make better sick children suffering from cough and fevers uses the many herbs and spices she grew in her garden. Many complaints among the women were resolved before they came to the panchayat, as her advice was sought on matters both big and small. She was a strong-minded and progressive woman, way ahead of her time. Now, Boise Kaki was the best cook in the village. She was in great demand and always helped at the various weddings and pujas in the village. When cooking for pujas, one is not allowed to taste the food until it has been cooked and blessed by the pundit. While others would peel and prepare the vegetables, she would chunky the pots. She always managed to put the right amount of salt, seasoning, and other ingredients. As for the parsad, she was the expert. When there were yagnas in the temple, Boise Kaki made the best parsad. Once, when Sumitra asked that she be allowed to make the parsad and the meals, everyone was disappointed with the outcome. As the villagers sat down to eat, Javan, a 7-year-old boy, refused to eat his chana, aloo, pumpkin, and roti. Ma, he said, it missing taste. Everyone nodded in agreement. When Kamla Ramrup came to visit Boise Kaki, she was surprised. Kamla explained that her father was arranging a marriage with a man named Hari from Barakpur, while she liked Sona from our village. Boise Kaki, who was herself the result of an arranged marriage, which turned out quite well, was reluctant to become involved. As she often said, referring to her husband, Berridge, I didn't learn to like him, and now he's the best husband a woman could wish for. When Kamla explained that she and Sona loved each other, Boise Kaki decided to listen. Now, Sona and Kamla had known each other since primary school. When Mr. Ramrup found that his daughter was seen at the 4:30 show at the Sunbeam Cinema, he was furious. After all, Kamla was a beautiful and educated girl. He had sacrificed to send her to Kesari Commercial School, and she had a job as a accounts clerk at Chanka's Hardware. He wanted something better for her because Sona worked as a truck driver in the same place. But their love blossomed. Kamla's father threatened to stop her from working and resolved to find a more suitable boy for her. So he sought the assistance of Buchanan Sadhu, the village matchmaker, who told him about one of his relatives, Harry from Barakpur. Harry was supposed to come and see her in 1 week. Usually, a party that included the prospective groom, his father, and other male relatives would visit the prospective bride's home, where they would be entertained in grand style with much food and drink. If the boy liked the girl, wedding plans would be set in motion. No one ever thought of asking what the girl wanted or if she liked the boy. Now, Harry's father had two sons. He was a farmer in Barakpur. The younger one worked as an electrician with the oil company, whilst Harry was supposed to help his father with the gardening. Harry, however, was a saga boy who felt he was too good to work in the rice fields. He had joined a group of good-for-nothing fellas hanging round the street corners all hours of the night. When his father wanted to discipline him, his mother protested. Oh God, boys will be boys, he could change. Well, when the boys were caught stealing a car and spent 1 year in jail, Harry's mother suggested, well, if he get a good wife, he go settle down. With the help of his uncle Buchanan Sadhu, Harry would pretend to be his younger brother Harish. So when Mr. Ramrook thought he was getting a good boy for his daughter, he was getting a crook and a jailbird who had shown his brother work badge when he came to see Kamla. Kamla knew something was not right. If he walk in Texaco, he gonna meet plenty girls. Why he gonna want to marry me? She asked Boise Kaki. Boise Kaki nodded. Yeah. Keep calm, keep calm. Don't get your father vexed. I go see what could be done. The following Monday, Boise Kaki decided to visit Barakpur. There she found neighbors who were only too willing to tell what a crook and a loafer Harry was. Armed with this knowledge, she first visited Buchanan Sadhu and gave him a good piece of my mind. She then asked her husband to call in Mr. Ramrook and his wife to speak to them. Of course, she was present, but said nothing. As they relented and agreed that Kamla could marry sooner, she mused to herself, you see, Berish has all time do everything I tell him. Thank you.
Thank you, Motilal. Very entertaining.
I'll try it.
Thanks, Moti.
Any
That is-
comments? Any more comments?
That is one from my first book.
What's the name of the book and where can we get it?
The first book was Kal Kahani, Stories of Yesteryear.
Yeah, well, it have a lot of the traditions
Yeah.
of long ago, the dowry, arranged marriage, and all that jewelry. You itemize them, some of them. Moti, just repeat some of them again. The bearer, what again?
The glass
well, you-
bracelets.
you-
Heather would
that-
know.
It is-
Watch Heather
in
hand.
addition to your,
Watch Heather hand.
to your gold jewelry and thing for the wedding,
Call the
you
names
to-
again.
you to get
boy.
some glass jewelry.
You have Nagpur.
Glass.
Nagpur is
Nagpur is
the
in nose.
For
the
nose.
nose.
Call again.
Churia.
The har-
Curia.
Churia is Bira.
Yeah.
The
Curia.
har is them big elaborate necklace.
Uh-huh.
Right? And
Hassle-
this
what
is
is
long time,
Hassle
you know.
Yeah. You have
People
Hasoli
wearing
too.
the Nakpul is
No, you
those
call
rings.
next one. Call again. Check back
Let me
the story.
look back.
When you say array of jewelry. We talked about that is when her array of jewelry will come out.
Yes.
Heather, you're wearing
Mhm.
any
Oh, you're
right
talking
at the
about the
moment?
rice. Yeah. We
Nakful,
talked about rice.
beras,
Wearing
churias,
any what?
bindis.
Beras?
Bindis is just the
Bindi
thing
is
you
the
put on
Well,
your
you don't
Yes,
have
forehead.
a
yes.
The
bindi.
gold thing.
No, I
That's
don't
a
have a
bindi.
bindi, no.
You have
Girl,
the
The
nose ring.
Mangal Sutra
I
is
have
the
the nose thing,
elaborate
yeah.
what is
Mon-
called the necklace. They have all sort of attachments to the chain, the necklace from the neck.
But what's the
And
word?
then there was the ankle bracelet too, you know.
Yeah, well, Boise khaki is over some long hungry. You can't see that.
You just mentioned the word sutra. What is that?
Mangal Sutra. That is this big elaborate necklace
Yeah.
with all they have what is called attachments. Things looking like coins used to be on
Oh,
the
yeah.
necklace.
And just one more thing. You talked about cupping. If you could talk a little about that, what cupping involves.
All right. Well, I knew about cupping because I used to fall down all the time and get nara. So what they used to do, these
Girls, you
people who used
listening
to
to
practice
what
cupping,
cupping is all
they
about?
put
Yeah.
this on your belly, right? They put a wad of cotton soaked in some kind of thing, and they have a lighted, they make a little
Candle.
thing there and they soak it in tea and they light it.
Mm.
And when they put the glass
Cup.
over that, the flame use up the oxygen and it
Mhm.
creates a vacuum, and that's supposed to pull back things in place. And a few years ago, that was a big thing about they talk about that in the Olympics, and a lot of people was doing that to you know, to tune up the muscles and all this type of thing. They used to
Strains
call
and
it
thing.
in local term. They say that they put a glass and to fix your nara and your butcher your strains. As Vishnu could probably elaborate on that um if you have volume. So Frank could probably tell us about the medical value
I
of that.
don't know if he has volume as
Well,
yet. Let me see.
When they do these are folk type remedies, and particularly cupping, you mentioned cupping in the Olympics and so on. When they do a study, a real scientific empirical study, the relief you get from cupping and the relief you get from a placebo is about the same.
From Frank, just repeat that, please.
They said when they do empirical studies with proper statistics and different assessments and so on in a scientific study, the relief you get from cupping is the same as you get from a placebo, the same percentage. So a placebo is defined as somebody,
Yeah.
or 30% of people responding. So if you give a sugar pill for anything, about 30% of the people will say, "Oh, I really got relief." And then when you use a cupping, the same 30% would respond as well. So there's so much psychology involved in sports that if you do something, I know one time up here in a little league hockey team, the kids were like 10 and 12 years old and they were losing. And halftime, the coach said, "I'm going to tape an aspirin to each of your hockey sticks." And that seemed to spark the boys into playing harder. They ended up winning the game. Obviously, it wasn't due to the taped aspirin. It was due to the psychological effects of the suggestion. So yeah, the placebo effect and the cupping effect is about the same.
Another thing,
All I could say
Moti
is
mentioned,
that
another thing. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Moti first. After.
all I
I'll
could
talk.
say is when my belly was hurting me, and my
It
mother
worked.
carried me by Rig Aji, and Rig Aji put that glass
Cup.
there, and I could feel the pull, and I come home and my belly stopped hurting me. There's this old lady, we say when we say Boise khaki. She was an old woman and she lived near the rig. So to everybody in the village, she was Rig Aji. And she used to do all these charring and rubbing belly and all them kind of things.
The other tradition which has gone no longer follow, we not follow. That is addressing people, your elders, not
Yeah.
by directly by name. So Boise Kaki. So I would say Heather father. I wouldn't call him by his name.
Yes.
Heather mother.
Header
Gosha
mother, header
aunt,
father, yes.
you know,
Yeah.
Vishnu brother. I wouldn't call Vishnu brother directly by name. I say Vishnu
Because
brother.
he
How you going,
because he
boy,
older
Vishnu
than you.
brother? You know, so that's another tradition that it's dying, it's not died. And
Another thing
yeah,
that one of the older ladies in the village told me about this bracelet, you know. You see, you get two set of bracelets away. No, your regular bracelet, the going out one, as a genuine gold and all that. And then you have your everyday one, which most of the time is will be the silver ones and the artificial glass one. And they say when all the glass one break, that means the honeymoon over. But when I look at Heather's hand, no, I say, go God, girl, that honeymoon going long.
Yeah, I ain't had no glass ones, you know.
All right.
And they would have they would have break a long time ago. Just shoveling snow, man. God.
Well, I go tell you, if you was in Trinidad, you couldn't wear all that and walk around, you know.
Well, you know, when I came to Trinidad in 1982, when I went down by Gulf City Mall, everybody tell me you better not go to Port of Spain, you know, they go chop off your hands. So anyway, I went to Port of Spain by St. James Mall, and everybody there telling me you better not go on South, you know, they go chop off your hand. Nobody chop it at all.
But
Okay.
about the honeymoon thing, I know an Indian couple here from India, and they have the henna that they paint on their hands. And she was telling us that with the henna, they cannot consummate the marriage until the henna is completely disappeared. And sometimes it can take about 2 to 3 weeks for that to happen. Is that so in Trinidad too?
Well, what I know that there is this custom which is called the lokani, right? And yesterday we had a story in this guy's book that we launched in the library, and he was talking about that too. And it's where the women were gossiping, you know, normally when they're cooking and the older woman, they don't have no inhibitions when they cooking for the wedding and all that. So they was talking about their experiences and all that after on the wedding night. And one of the women mentioned, well, he didn't get to touch me because for the first 3 days because the Lukani was there. And then I had to go back to my father's home and come back this Sunday. She said, I want to come back this Sunday. The man rushed me. The man rushed me like if I eat nothing long time. So that was I know about the Lukani and the period of time, but I suppose a lot of fellas like Krishna and them fellas might be cheat.
I didn't have Lukuni in my time. And that was a tradition again going on. But to get back to the name, just to get back to the name for a personal thing. So one of my sons got married. So I want to know now what my daughter-in-law will call me. She said, Krishna, I want some juice. You know, Radhika, I want something to drink. So no pa or ma thing long as long time now. Pa, ma, what do you want? You know, Krishna. So I don't know. I take it. I take it. I had to take it. But that is the modern generation. That's the modern
Yeah.
generation. Yeah.
When Savi daughter get married, right? So the daughter husband call me Mr. Buru Singh. But he call him Savi. After a week passed, Savi tell him here what happened. if you want to call me Mrs. Burusi, you can call me or you can call me Ma. You can't call me Safi. So you learn quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me move along.
Well, Gershia, now let's see what we're going. Like, I have one poem by Cynthia. Should I do that and then you're next?
Sure, and we have Krishna as well.
Oh, okay. And oh yes, okay. So you said you had two poems by the one I have is On Being a West Indian by Cynthia.
Okay, well, can you go and then I'll go with my poems and then Krishna can go and then I'll end with the story.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so this is Cynthia, written in 1982, On Being a West Indian. Walking to blue skies, the pounding of the surf at the beach, carefree laughter, gaiety, brightly colored dresses, scarves, head ties, strolling in the moonlight, the hum of cicadas, feeling kinship with scenes of the tropics, steel band melodies, crowded marketplaces, sing-song accents, variegated people, a sense of belonging. That's what it is like on being a West Indian. Recognizable all over the world. That's just my little add-on at the end.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely piece.
Well, it covers all the bases, it paints a picture. And that's why it's West Indian rather than Trinidadian. It applies on every island.
Even though I've been taking these quizzes to tell you what your decor style is like, and I keep getting cottage, comfy cottage or something like that. I don't know where that comes from. But
Cynthia sent me a story too, but on the email, the print is very faint. I really can't, hard to strain to read that.
read it, yeah. I think
It's probably the
I
same
got
one
the
she
same
sent to
one.
you, Gershia?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Okay,
It
so
always amazes me how our themes, even though we don't discuss it before, fall in line because well, when I read the story, you will see the connection with most of what was read today.
yeah. Okay, so I guess you're up next with her stuff or your own.
My own. So
Okay.
I'm gonna read my two poems.
Okay.
I'm trying my hand at something. Okay. I think this came from a writing prompt. He says I'm beautiful. He says he hates it when I call myself fat, cutting my laughter. And I see he still sees me as the sixth grader he met, the one too afraid to jump into the arms of an awaiting reservoir. We argued then too. Knew me long before I went to war with a cubicle, battling gray walls, blocking out light, threatening asphyxia, before bamboo earrings and nose rings. I tell him I'm a realist with a shrug. He tells me I'm beautiful with determined eyes. We argue now. I tell him Trinidadians don't pussyfoot around the truth. A fat. And he defends me, from words he's never heard, from eyes he's never had the chance to stare down, faces he'd punch if they ever fucking dared. I ask him if he even sees me. He looks at me and says, more than you know. I'm not here in spite of, you know. That's my first piece. Oh, wait. All right, and this is my second
Don't press
piece.
shine a light.
Oh, any comments?
Yeah, Frank.
Any
Well,
comments?
Gersha, the one thing
Yes,
about
ma'am.
that is
Yeah.
you talk about the Trinidadians being direct, and actually I speak of that too in my Cersei's dance in the epilogue when Nyla, the character, comes back from foreign and she comes back to Trinidad and she's
Yeah.
taking a bus back to Plaisance and she's saying, oh, she's forgotten how Trinidadians can be direct, you know. And that's one thing. There's no pussyfooting around what you mean or
Yeah.
what you could mean. They say it, you know, directly. So that's I pick up on that, you know. It's one of the what do you call it? There's the features that we're known for. So,
Yeah.
and then when people
Traits.
over here can't take it, because you know how in Canada we're supposed to be so polite, you know. So
Politically correct.
yeah. So yeah, that you know, if my husband and I are fighting, that's usually the way it is. I'm direct, I'm too direct, and he's too vague. So that's one thing I noticed about what you said. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, if there are no other comments, I guess I'll read the second piece.
Okay.
This is, yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
Krishna, you had a comment?
No question. What did you say it was from a prompt? What was the prompt? I just
Oh, it's an old
curious.
prompt I've been doing for years. It goes, well, it's a play on it. The initial prompt was, I'm beautiful because, and I'm ugly for.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And this one just starts with the I'm beautiful.
And if you're fat, you're fat.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that was one, and this is the second piece. And this I'm playing a little bit. A girlfriend asked me to do something for her. So I've been writing some poetry with a theme. Normally when I write poetry, I just write based on inspiration. But this was is the term commissioned, I guess? When someone tells you they want you to write and it needs to be a specific topic.
Yes, you can use that.
Yeah. So I'll share it. One day scream. No, you know what? This is a performance piece. So one day screams, but now whispers. One day screams, but now whispers. One day I will have my body back. Now, this battered body of mine cross the stage with degree in hand. One day I will have my own home. Now I live in an apartment alone. I can decorate it to my liking. One day I will have a love that is great. Now I take myself out for coffee and a key lime tartlet. I grow flowers on my balcony and read myself to sleep. One day I won't need meetings and outreach calls. Now I no longer run from what I feel. I can identify hardware stores and I know they can't give me what I need. One day will fade out like a 90s song. Now will be yesterday. Yesterday will be the bridge that crosses me into now. One day I won't scream about loss and promises of perfection. Now I won't even have to whisper affirmations and reminders of progress because I will just be. I will be so in the moment. I will be. That's my piece. Are there any comments?
Yeah, we got the emotional piece.
It's almost like you know, stop wishing for the future and live your life now. Yeah, because you know, someday might never get here, and by the time you get to someday, you will have changed enough that it won't fit anymore. So
Yeah.
just live your life now.
Living in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but you live your life now, and but look forward, you know, because the house coming.
It's amazing how no matter how hard we try as writers, what we're going through and what we're doing seeps, at least for me, always seems to seep in. Oh, all right, Heather, I will pass along. Thank you for listening to my poetry.
Okay. Now, you'll be back later with Cynthia's piece, are you? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
her
we'll
short
move
story.
on to Krishna, who's reading for Willard. And there's I don't know which piece you're going to read first, Doppelganger or Bridesmaid, Krishna.
See the I'll read Bridesmaid and then let me just
Okay.
I had to get it right. Let me see. Okay. Poems to read at Poetry and Prose. Bridesmaid by A.V. Bridgewood. Are you all hearing me? Because
Yes.
I minimized my screen so I could see it on the computer, right?
Yes, we are.
Bridesmaid. First of all, these poems, Gosha, is you send these to him or he
Yes, I
chose
did.
those?
No,
Or
I
you send
sent
these to him?
those. I wanted to find some award-winning poetry to share.
Award-winning poems. All right. Bridesmaid. Two buns weeping cardamom into cardboard were wrapped in your worst towels. I love how your hair dries, clumping like flung earth, then splitting into static. So this is how you live here, naked in a pine box, watching the sails. Fjord is a whatever word, a place you take sandwiches. You turn the sandglass, throw water on the hot stones, sidle off the pier's end like you're crossing a road. What do I know? I am a visitor. I come bearing supermarket tulips. The fiance makes me spin fables of your adolescence. Leave my shoes at the door. The fjord is still pretty wild to me, pulled like desire in its sea of mountains, its rocks sinewed like clenched hands. That's Bridesmaid. Very imagistic. Similes, metaphors. Strange to me. All right, let's go to the next poem. Doppelganger. The doppelganger is an apparition or double of a living person. It's like you meet somebody who's just like you. Well, it tell me, you is so and so. You know, when you when you go certain places, you is so and so. I said no. A twin stranger that if you meet, they say could be bad luck. Could be bad luck. It could bring on illness, danger, something dangerous, or even death. Doppelganger by Michel Peñalosa. Don't know who is that. It upsets my tita that people think she looks like Oprah. She says she wants to be a queen in her own right. I think it's more likely she's racist. Or maybe she doesn't want the rest of us to expect a car and a car and a car. Or maybe my tita is tired of being a savior and a myth. That's it. Only tell me what only make of those things because I am confused.
That word tita, how do you spell that?
T-I-T-A.
T-I-T what?
T-I-T-A. My tita.
What's
I
that?
don't know if it's aunt. Gosha will tell us. I
Yeah,
have no
it's aunt in Spanish.
aunt in Spanish. My tita. Yeah. Ole tell me what ole make of them things because I am confused.
Well, as far as the doppelganger, Oprah used to, when she had her show, she used to, there was one show when she gave away a car to everybody in the audience. So I think that last line alludes
Oh,
to
she gave
that.
away a car, a car, a car. Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. She gave a
Okay.
car to everybody in the audience, and there were
Really?
like, I don't know, 100
Okay.
people in the audience. Yeah.
What? That woman well rich boy.
Yeah, too rich. But so it's almost like this person is being told that by her aunt, that she looks like Oprah, but she doesn't want to be Oprah. She wants
Yes.
to be herself. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's like, I don't know. I think, to me, this is what I got from the piece. I could be completely wrong. I got that, you know how sometimes in minority cultures, there's this caricature of like, and like the Black culture is a sassy Black friend, which is why I think it was called the double ganger, right? Because it's almost as if they just take people and imprint them on the necks. And I feel like from the aunt, it's always as if a lot of people have written poems about, the Titas, or so it's always the same kind of trope. So I think that's what the poem is speaking to, that it's just in the Spanish culture, like it's not just a double ganger of we're monolith of people, you know what I mean? As opposed to her just being this savior and this myth. Because I think the cliche is that the aunt is always this all-knowing character of wisdom. So at least that's what I get from it.
And could you tell me a little about Bridesmaid?
Bridesmaid,
What
I didn't quite
that one is
get.
all about?
Okay, so Bridesmaid, I didn't quite get Bridesmaid, to be honest. I'm probably so wrong about this, but I felt like Bridesmaids is just kind of written about like saying goodbye to childhood, you know? And the first part threw me because two buns weeping into cardamom weeping cardamom into cardboard. We're wrapped in your worst towels. I love how your hair dries clumping. I didn't quite get that.
Well, if you didn't quite get
So
it, I
when
didn't
it
get it.
said, yeah, and then it said like earth, flung earth, then splitting into static. So this is how you live here, naked in a pine box, watching the sails. I thought initially that this was like, oh, are you speaking to like death, some kind of, death? But then, yeah, when I read that, and then the hair dries clumping, it just made me, I don't know, it just made me think of decay. But then I had to look up for Jord, right? And for
Fjord.
It's fjord.
Fjord.
Is that correct? Not
Yes.
so, Heather?
And
Fjord?
Fjord.
so when I
Fjord.
looked it up, it's actually about a scenery, about mountains and a river in between. Fjord, this is so
Yes,
fjord or
it's fjord.
whatever.
Right.
Fjord
Yeah,
is a
fjord.
whatever word.
Yeah,
A place you take sandwiches. You turn the sandglass through water on the hot stones.
Also, it's referring to like a sauna,
Yeah, settle off the pier's
Right.
end.
because in Norway the fjords come into the coastline, big indentations of cliffs on both sides.
Yes, so so I saw that scenery. So it was more speaking towards the scenery of it. So I didn't quite know what to make of it. There is something, hold on, at the end that I had seen when I was looking it up. So a place you take sandwiches. So I'm thinking like, okay, so this is picnic. Right? At that point, I was like, okay, so this is picnic, or you had someone's funeral or something, you know. Because I still couldn't get Pine Box out of my head. Like you're crossing a road. What do I know? I am the visitor. I come bearing supermarket tulips. The fiance makes me spin. Fables of your adolescence. Leave my shoes at the door. The fjord is still pretty wild to me, cooled like desire. In its V of mountains, its rocks sinewed like clenched hands. So that's why I thought it was kind of like saying goodbye to childhood or to youth. But I'll leave it open for what anybody else has to say, and then I can tell you what I found when that was at the under the poem. Okay, if no one else has, oh, someone?
I'd just like to ask Krishna, when he had longer hair, if anybody ever take him for Pandy.
Actually, they used to call me Pandy in school. Look Pandy, coming. No, but Moti, what does that have to do with bridesmaid? Please make the connection.
No, that has to do with the second poem.
Oh, the doppelganger business.
Doppelganger.
Yeah, well, they call me Pandy. So I used to hear them, look Pandy, look Pandy.
So this is what the author wrote about their poem, Bridesmaid. As a queer person who grew up before gay marriage was legalized in the UK, I always experience a residual discomfort at weddings, a feeling of being distanced or othered. I think when you feel like you're an outsider, a situation looking like you're outside a situation looking in, that is often a good place from which to write a poem. I wanted to capture that sense of being a visitor in a disorienting landscape, but also the role that friendship and connection to nature can play in grounding us through that disorientation. And this is why it's award winning.
Oh.
I don't know.
Well, I guess you have to work at getting it, because maybe if we're not gay and standing outside a situation, we don't get it.
I think the author captured it beautifully, because you do feel that disorientation. And when I reread it, at the end you get the friendship, but I really thought it was a death. That pine box, to me, when I first read it, I thought it's somebody, and the clumping hair, because hair continues to grow even after you pass, I think. So that's what I got from it.
And where is this award from?
It was commended in the National Poetry Competition of 2003.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's a writer from Manchester.
Oh.
They're four young poets and a recent graduate of UEA's MA Masters of Poetry. So I always like, especially with work and poetry, I always like to read outside a lot of times of what is award-winning or what I think I should aspire to. It always kind of makes me think deeper. It's kind of like when we read the Commonwealth Prize short stories. I always like to read them. I guess I feel like, let me see what's being acknowledged and what's. Any thoughts? All right.
Well, once it's explained, it's falls into place, but if I guess it just depends where your head is at, and it may mean different things to different people. So depending even where you are in your life. So if it's for somebody struggling with their sexual identity, and you're not, then you're gonna get two different views on it.
And that's why I took it off when I sent it, because I feel like with poetry, when I read something, it doesn't have to mean what the author intends. This is just my personal view. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to mean what the author intends it to mean. It's what you want to take away from the piece, what stands out to you from the piece.
Yeah, I find that even when I write, even prose, when I have a certain intention, and somebody else will get something completely different out of it, and then they'll see things in it that I didn't think I put there, but it's there,
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just even Samuel Selvin himself experienced that when he came back to Trinidad, and he met with a group of students of his work, and they were pointing out things to him, and he was saying, well, didn't really mean to put that in there. I didn't do it on purpose, but
Yeah.
so that's why it's helpful to have forums like ours, because then you could get different points of view, and then
Yeah.
you could see more things, it's a deeper meaning can go into every presentation.
Yeah. And it's always helpful to have Krishna and Vishnu here. Yes.
The problem with this is that it's only now I get it. So I get a chance to look at it
Yes, I literally
analytically,
just gave it to you 5 minutes ago.
analytically and make sense out of it. So then I could elaborate, and then I could expatiate. Right?
Yes. And
But
that's
I
on
was
me. I gave it to Krishna 5
I
minutes
was
ago.
stumped. Yes, I was stumped with it here.
Use
That's it.
Pandey or use agitation?
But I thank you for reading, Krish.
Yeah,
I
no
think
problems. No
I
problems.
think I'm the last one to go.
Vishnu didn't get back his audio?
Let's try. Vishnu, I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask you to unmute one more time. I hope. No, we're still not hearing you. Well, we're
Wanna-
happy you're sticking it through with
That's
us.
not. But Gershwin, he has a cell. If he calls you, if he
Yeah.
calls you,
Do you want to call me,
there's some
Vishnu?
song there. Vish, you wanna call her and read what you have to read with yourself.
Yes.
Try that.
Call she on
Let
WhatsApp
me
with
see.
you.
I will try to
Call
pick
her
up
now.
Vishnu, and
Yeah.
let me know if you guys are hearing it ringing.
It's ringing.
Are you hearing it?
That's it.
Tell me if you're hearing.
He's frozen now. He's frozen. He's like the sheet Frank showed us. Frozen.
Hi, Vishnu,
Frozen
can you hear
lake.
me? It says reconnecting.
Oh, he's using the internet.
It says, yeah, it says reconnecting.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. I can call again. Hold on.
No, well, if that doesn't work, as the gas fan passing there. Like me.
Okay.
But Frank, you're correct, I'm not going on that lake, I'm not walking on that lake. Next thing you know, I reach a thin spot and I've gone down.
While this is
Skating on thin ice.
while this is going on, I'm looking out over my iPad out in the lake, and there's all kinds of people going by on their
Big crazy boy.
on their forward thing. There was a couple that they were about 200 yards way out.
a couple.
Well, Hannah, Frank, I've heard on the national news, that people have been going through the ice regularly in Canada over the past few years because the ice just is not getting as thick.
Yeah. Well, a bunch of vehicles have gone by, so it's probably thick enough here.
Closer to shore, but if you go out too far, you'll fall in.
Yeah, that's the thing. You never know.
Gush, you
Yeah.
got into?
No,
Yes.
unfortunately not.
Well, go ahead now with the program.
Sure.
Well,
right.
I think next is what? I think, Gersha, you're going to read Cynthia's short story.
Cynthia's short story.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so this is a short story written by the lovely Cynthia Birch, and it's called A Shot in the Dark. What had caused the sound that woke me? I looked at the clock, 12:10 a.m. Only one way to find out. But did I want to know? Safer perhaps to wait and get the news afterward. No, that was a coward's way. The night was so dark, putting on a coat to remain even more obtrusive. I crept outside silently and, easing the door shut behind me, hurried along the lane. At first I heard nothing more, saw no one. But as I rounded a bend in the narrow street, I sensed, rather than saw, a figure in a heap at the end of the block of flats. Now more shapes emerged from doorways, and a woman bending over the figure screamed, "Oh God, he dead! My son dead!" The woman went to the bundle and cradled his head in her arms. More family members and neighbors ran out. "Ma Peters, what happened? Is my son? They shoot him! Just so!" Sirens screamed, and 2 police cars appeared. But several minutes had elapsed, and the street held no clue as to who had shot the young man. Lenny. A few blocks away, Lenny had scrambled back into his house. His father and sister Judy were accustomed to his appearing and disappearing, so hardly stirred from where they were, sleeping in the small space. He on a small divan, and Judy on a single cot. Lenny shook off his faux leather jacket and chucked it into the corner. Slim and lanky, chocolate complexioned, his hair in the latest scary style, sticking straight up in the middle. He looked not much different from the rest of the gang members with whom he hung out. Somewhat restless and fidgety, he tried not to disturb his father and Judy, so dropped down on the floor, but could not sleep. Too much had happened. Would his actions go unnoticed? He hardly cared, only wished he could sleep. He glanced at the one shuttered window, which let only an occasional sliver of light enter the small hovel. It was quiet here, and he could forget the events of the last few hours. Tomorrow could wait. That evening, towards sunset, Judy had a premonition that tonight would be different. She had returned home early, and neither her father, Sam, nor Lenny, her brother, had got back. The house felt strangely empty, though this wasn't the first time she had come home and been there alone. She couldn't put her finger on why it seemed different. Maybe it's my imagination, she thought, and set about preparing an evening meal. Though only 15, Judy was used to keeping the place clean and tidy and cooking for all of them. Her mother had died 3 years before, and Judy had dropped out of school right after that. Never having quite enough to eat, she was underweight, a bit pale, but healthy enough. She did odd jobs during the day to help out since her father earned little, and Lenny almost never contributed to the household. Carol, one of Judy's few friends, asked her often, "Why is you who have to do everything?" Judy shrugged. You know the boys round here only lime at the corner, play cards, and smoke Carol. It's not my fault, Carol added, but it's not fair, you know. Judy smiled. It could be worse. At least I have somewhere to live, and I can cope. Suit yourself then, but I wouldn't do that. This evening, Judy thought about Carol and wondered if she could change to be more like her. Useless to think about that, though. She had put some rice to boil and fried the fish the way her father liked it, with a few slivers of hot pepper and a squeeze of lime. She was half listening out for one of them to come home. Next door, some children were running about, screaming and playing catch. Otherwise, only the low sound of the radio interrupted the quiet at the end of the street. Her father came in at early nightfall, and Judy set out their supper. No use waiting for her wayward brother, who might or might not show up. After hearing Ma Peters crying out on discovering her dead son, I had beaten a hasty retreat. There was nothing I could do, and Ma Peters had her neighbors and friends with her. I returned home quickly, hearing the sirens of the approaching police cars. I turned over in my mind the events of the last few minutes and tried to piece together bits and pieces of rumors I had heard recently. Boyo, Ma Peters' son, had become involved in a neighborhood gang. Ma Peters, a God-fearing woman, employed Boyo not to keep bad company. For a few nights, it seemed that Boyo was keeping to himself, but his friends kept calling to him, and Boyo slipped back into the habit of going down to the corner to lime with them. Possibly Boyo had tried to break away, but knew too much. This was becoming a grave problem in this country, so the idea was not far-fetched. The following day, Lenny was the first to awaken, mainly because he had not really slept. How could he sleep? One minute he had been sitting with his partners under the dim streetlight at the corner of Midging Lane, smoking, having a beer, and playing a hand of all fours. The old steel drum was their makeshift table, and a few bricks and stones gave them seats. The next, Lenny was on the run. Around 10 o'clock, Lenny had thought of leaving the boys, but when he stood up to go, Boyo said, "Just because you're winning, you're leaving now?" Lenny sat back down, and they continued to playing. An hour later, Boyo stood up suddenly and grabbed the pile of money on the table. The others shouted at him and darted off behind him, but Boyo was too swift for them. Lenny sprinted off after Boyo and soon gained on him despite the darkness. At one point, it seemed that Boyo might make good his escape. So Lenny took out his pistol and fired shot in Boyo's general direction. It was almost an instinctive action aimed at preventing Boyo's escape. Too bad that the bullet found its mark, hitting Boyo squarely in his back. Before Boyo could probably fall to the ground, Lenny spun around and tore off in the opposite direction. No stopping now. Lenny had to get the hell out of there. He ran to an open lot, scrambled through some bushes, and kept going. His one thought now was that he mustn't be connected with Boyo's shooting. True, Boyo hadn't seen him. He didn't think. But he would know that Lenny was one of the boys with whom he had been playing cards, drinking and smoking, and whose money he had stolen. The others would put two and two together. Lenny continued to lie on the floor as these thoughts corrosed through his mind. He did not let his father or Judy know that he was awake. He had no plan as to how to spend the next few hours without doing anything unusual or making some move that would seem suspicious. He wondered when the police would get around to seeking out and questioning the group of card players. There was one good thing about that. This was Sandyland. far from normal civilization, and chances were that a simple procedure like interrogating Boyo's friends might take the cops a while. He would have some time, at least half a day, to come up with a way out. At last, Judy and their father left for work after going back and forth to have breakfast, bathe, and dress. Lenny waited a few minutes longer, then got up. He went to the coat he had discarded on coming home and felt the right front pocket for his pistol. Panic seized him. What the fuck? I must have dropped the gun! Now he had no time to dawdle. If he left and told no one, Judy and father would become alarmed by the next day. Dared he leave a note? But what would he say? Better to say nothing. Escape. Uppermost in Lenny's mind was the matter of the gun. If he tried to recover, it might mean being seen and apprehended. No, that was too risky. Better to cut and run. Then when should he leave? To wait until later could bring the police and a whole bunch of questions to which he had no answers. To set off now in full light of morning had its risks too. Lenny set about packing a few necessities into his backpack. He often moved around with it, so that would not arouse any suspicion. He thought swiftly of the quickest way to get out of the village, preferably unnoticed. A few blocks away from the scene of the murder, he could hop a bus. He had to gamble on making that short trip to get to the main road. Through the same vacant lot he had used last night. He couldn't run, not in daylight, yet he needed to move swiftly. There was not a minute to lose. In a few minutes, Lenny slipped out of the back door of the small house. Luckily, he saw no one and took off in the direction of the bus stop, being careful not to hurry, but not slackening his pace either. He kept his gaze fixed on the ground ahead, not risking to look around. He took note of the few houses he passed, with their little gardens or flower pots, short, colorful curtains moving slightly in the breeze, aware that it might be a long time before he saw them again, if he ever did. Striding along, Lenny tried to keep a calm exterior, but the thought of the missing gun and the fear that he might run into someone at any moment made his heart race. He was noted for being a cool dude, but this was serious. He had to get out of the area without delay. And that is a short excerpt. And Cynthia said that if you wanted to know the rest, you can email her and she'll happily send you the rest of the story. Any comments?
Well, Cynthia always keeps saying she's not really a writer, but I thought this was quite a good story and I'd like to hear the rest of it.
I was going to say the same thing, and I find her writing it's nice, it's good. And
Yeah.
sometimes with the way she structures sentences, sometimes with the shorter sentences, it gives you a sense of the urgency of the situation. And then you're reading the story in third person, and then you go into first person, and then you go back to third person, which for me, I think it was effective. I'm really
Well,
looking
that's
forward for the rest.
one thing about this group is that, it gives you confidence to build upon your own talents. And, she was always kind of shy to address her own work, but now, maybe with our encouragement, she'll do more.
I enjoyed reading it and I liked the character building because I felt that she did a lot with a small space and establishing the characters in the story. You get a pretty good idea of the family dynamic in such a short space.
Yeah. So is it part of a novelette or something
I
like
am
that?
not sure. It's part of a longer story, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure exactly.
Okay.
But I think I'll definitely reach out to her to get the full
Yeah, it's
version.
certainly something she can build upon. Now I noticed that June had joined us a little while back, and I don't know if she'd like to join in the conversation. Anyway, any other comments?
Yes.
Oh, hi there, June.
Yes,
Welcome.
sorry about that. I had I was a little late in coming in.
That's
But
okay. You're always welcome.
thanks. I enjoyed what I heard.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Thanks very
Thanks
much.
for coming, June.
Yes, I do enjoy these sessions. Thank you.
Gersha, when you contact her, I'd like to get have her email that story to me as well.
Sure, no problem, will do. Hi, Muti, you have a comment?
Yeah, I am looking forward for the rest of the story. I really like the story, and it relevant because it could be what's happening in our society now.
Except she was brave to go out in the dark, eh?
I felt so. I felt that everything was kind of connecting as we read today, starting with Frank's piece and then even Mutilal's piece as well. It kind of connects. So it really is based on our culture, our past, and then moving into
So what
a
is
little
it?
bit into like the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, and then like what we're dealing with
No,
now.
Yes, that's very much so. The guns and the disregard for human life is what.
Yes. And you know what? I liked the fact she wrote it like that because a lot of these things are so senseless. You know, after I don't know if it happens elsewhere, but usually after a holiday, Independence Day, Carnival, there's always a series of, you know, people get shot or somebody gets
Yeah.
attack someone with a cutlass or something.
but
Yeah, and it's just because they were liming and at a certain point alcohol got
Took
in
over.
play and it was something very simple and silly and something that happened because they didn't think two steps ahead.
They don't
So,
want to walk away. They don't want to walk away.
yeah.
Yeah,
at the beginning, I thought that it might have been a police shooting because I think we having quite a bit of that now. Police involved shooting. So, but then, well, as I say, waiting to see how the story would evolve.
Yes, yes, definitely waiting to see how Lenny gets himself out of this.
Yeah.
So, Frank, you have a comment?
No, I'm good.
All right, Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lenny belongs to a gang, and Boyo finds himself involved in a gang, and a little dispute there. Well, Boyo grabbed the money and he gone, right? So Lenny takes out his gun and shoots Boyo. Then Lenny goes home. And that's how it's done. That's how you hear gang killing, people dying, right? As June just said a while ago. So you kill another human being, and what's it to you? What's it to you?
Yeah.
And then, but I can understand his fear because you don't fear the police. You don't fear anymore. So he had the fear of the gun is missing. That is the only thing.
He fears being caught.
With me, why gang people are not afraid of being caught?
Yes, they are.
They will not be caught. No. They know the police. They will not be caught. That's how our gangs are in Trinidad.
Yeah, but gang people
They
are
kill.
afraid of being caught. I don't think they're not afraid.
They kill indiscriminately, and nobody will catch them. They have you see how they do it brazenly. They They shoot, they come out the car, they shoot, and they go back in the car. Or they make a robbery and they have a car waiting for them. They jump in the car and they're gone. Nobody will catch them. None. And
But
that
that
how
doesn't mean they
the
don't
state
fear
is.
being caught.
Why? Oh, no,
Because
there's no
it
fear.
will put an at
Kush,
some point it'll put an
Um,
interruption in their
Kush,
life.
Kush.
there's no fear of being caught in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, why
Chris, I just
Lenny
want to say
looking to
something here.
leave?
Olive,
Because
go
he
ahead,
feared
talk.
the police come in.
I just want to say something here because I don't know how much gambling it just have in your area, but in my area there used to be a lot of gambling. We had the savannah, the recreation ground, and the pavilion, and sometimes things going on there, but nobody looking at that because they're gambling. And gamblers, when if somebody cheat, if somebody thief a card, if somebody thief money, gamblers, the emotions really runs high. And you would see that somebody who you know all your life, who always calm and collected, and if he is being cheated, or if you take his money or something, the gambling, I don't know where that anger and rage has come from, but I have seen that.
Yeah.
I have seen that, yeah, and it happens. It don't take time. It's an instantaneous thing. This man take the money and he gone. Before you know it,
You're
boom.
behind him.
Yeah. But I think, okay, in the story, because I don't know if all criminals don't fear the police, but in the story, I think it's safe to say Lenny is scared of the repercussions of being caught.
Well, that comes
Which is
after,
what?
and
Which is
then
what?
it's not something that was planned
What
or
repercussions?
premeditated.
Gush,
It's
what
the anger.
repercussions of being caught?
Well, I
Going
think,
to jail.
okay,
Even if they
so
put you in jail, you get
yeah,
on cell phone.
they get out.
And so
They
they
get
get
out.
right.
But I feel as though
You see, it's gang.
nobody
Talk
that's
about
in
gang.
jail wants to be in jail.
Yeah.
And even when they get out and they get their bond or whatever, it's
Yeah.
still a headache probably for their family or for
Yes.
whoever, you know, if they have to borrow it from the higher up
No,
drug
that is
man
correct.
to get
The
them out.
family, Gush, the family is the one who suffers the most. I
Hi,
see them in
Frank.
Chagonas. I see them in Chagonas. Whenever I pass there, you see a whole set of members of a family. Somebody would have done something. Somebody would have, and the most worried look you see on the members of the family.
The
Yeah.
They're the
parents,
ones who are to pay. It's
Yeah.
like what they said is a wayward boy.
yeah,
And he
wayward.
was a wayward boy. So
Mhm.
we have some of us make wayward children.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have wayward children.
Even the one that got shot, they said his mother was God-fearing and, you know, and he
Yes,
passed.
right.
So
Okay.
I think she did quite a bit. She captured quite a bit of the culture in such a short space. It was just about eight
Correct.
pages. So it's very good work. Good work,
Mm.
Cynthia. I wish you were here.
Yes, yes.
Well, she would hear our comments and things and our feedback from the
I hope I
yes.
did her work justice.
version.
Very much.
Yes,
I
you read
wanted
it
to
good.
give this to Natasha or Willard to read, or even you, Krishna, as well. I know you guys bring these characters to life.
Well, thank you all. We're kind of running over time, but it was such a good riveting session. So we'll meet again in 2 weeks.
Yes, and we are going to be celebrating Heather in 2 weeks. So
You got my pieces, did you?
I got your pieces, so
Yeah.
I have to give them out this week. So if anyone wants to
I-
read from Heather's piece, please check your email because you'll be hearing from me. June, if you want to read, let me know.
Yeah. Yes, I will.
Okay, great.
Don't-
So I'll
Don't
send you.
don't
So
give
send me-
don't give her any of the sexy stories.
Well, who knows? Maybe June would like a sexy story.
It's a part of life.
Okay.
All righty, bye guys.
Bye.
I come
We'll
like
see
Krishna,
you.
you
going for
very
lunch
much.
now.
We
Have a-
all, yes, go enjoy your
Okay,
lunch.
going for lunch.
June, it was
Yeah.
lovely
Yeah,
seeing
come
you.
like Krishna, going for lunch now.
I myself. Yeah,
Okay.
lunchtime.
Enjoy.
Okay.
Okay.
All the
Bye,
best.
Thank you for
everybody.
cheering,
Thank you.
Heather.
Thank
you.
you
Yes,
very
thank-
much.
Thank you.